everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider inside TCO Performance Center. Matthew Coller here, along with Alec Lewis of The Athletic, and we have just walked off of the practice field. As you can maybe tell, we got a little sun out there today. It was a summer-ish training camp-like weather out there today on the practice field, but everybody here in the building buzzing because Justin Jefferson signed his contract. They had the press conference. I did hear that as well. We also got the unequivocal denial that the Vikings ever tried to trade Justin Jefferson, which of course...
Wait, but Malik Neighbor...
no, I didn't see him out there. I did ask. They handed we have a roster. I have it in my pocket here, and I was looking to see if Malik Neighbors was on this roster, what number he is. So I won't get too derailed, but Andrew Van Ginkel's wearing number 43, which just seems wrong. But that's a totally different podcast. This is about Justin Jefferson signing and what we saw today out there at mandatory minicamp. I asked Kevin O'Connell about the timing of this, how important it was. He kind of downplayed that, but I disagree. I think it actually was very important to get Justin Jefferson here. He looked great today out in the field practicing with Sam Darnold, and just eliminate any drama, any tension going into training camp, and get him on the field with his new quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great to have this done, both for us, that we don't have to worry about waking up at 7 in the morning and seeing it, and for a team that, I mean, look, like you watched it. We've been out here for the last few weeks. When Justin's on the field, there's a different energy to it. The guys look at him differently. It looks like sometimes they practice harder. Like, you never want to say that, but it's just, there is an intensity with it that he brings, and I think from what he said today, that he really wants to bring more of. Like, and we can get into this, but I was pretty impressed by and I was struck by how much he really wants to use this contract as a correlation for, like, I want to be more of a leader, almost in the, like, I just saw what Anthony Edwards did with some of that team, and I kind of want to be more of that guy for what we do here. But yeah, I mean, they can downplay it as much as they want. Had he not been here today, I wasn't going to freak out about it, because I'm sure, thought, like, ultimately this is going to get done. That was the indication we got from the get-go. But the fact that it is out of the way, that he can build a rapport with Sam Darnold, that he can get to know J.J. McCarthy, and that he can just be around and do what he loves to do, which, if you know anything about him, like, this dude is like a kid, and that he loves to play the game that he's played since he was a little kid. So it was awesome to see him back out there. I'm glad it's over, and I can sleep in again.
As far as his leadership, I slept in anyway, and then woke up to the alert, and it was like,
some of us, you know,
I'm gonna have to wake up.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I had an inkling, but I thought waking up at maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock would be okay, and it wasn't. They got it out there before that. So anyway,
they couldn't wait. They couldn't wait. $140 million. I mean, come on, can't.
Shame on me for not for figuring that they would wait until I got up. But as far as Jefferson and the role that he wants to take now with this organization, when you get that contract, it does come along with leadership credibility of, like, this organization has decided with its pocketbook, you are the franchise player. And one player once said, it's not about the dollars, it's what the dollars represent. And I got to tell you, it actually is about the dollars here and what they represent. But that part can't be ignored, that they did not try to fight him tooth and nail all the way through training camp and so forth. They got this done and signified with the highest contract, by far the highest guarantees that this position has ever seen, to say, we don't just like you, we truly love you. We just liked Kirk. That was the offer we gave him, and other players as well. Think about the players who they've negotiated with and said, thanks, but no thanks over the last couple of years. This is different with him. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said something very interesting, I thought, when we had a little side session with him before practice, where he said that when he and Kevin O'Connell got here, they made a list of the things that they wanted to accomplish. And this was on the list, and there were a lot of different things that they've been able to check off.
And Kwesi said today, like a legit, like, piece of paper.
Yes.
Like plan, bullet point. I don't know what it looked like, but like a legit
We didn't
list.
see the paper.
Yeah, he did, not yet. No.
We were only told
Try
about
to get the
paper.
PDF for this afternoon. But.
Right. Well, that would be some great sourcing from The Athletic.
No, yeah, it would.
If you were able to come up with that. But no, truly, that they made this list of things that they wanted to accomplish in their first couple of years within this window of, we're going to call it the competitive rebuild window forever. And this was the final check mark there. And of course, O'Connell did address whatever whatever rumors and made it very clear that there was never any indication. We knew that. We knew that the whole time. I never wavered on that. You never wavered on that in your coverage. Of course not. But I think that the importance of him as a franchise centerpiece was really signified by the timing and the way that they did the deal, that they could have tried to fight longer to get one more year or to structure it a different way. And Kwesi also told us that they did try other things with Justin Jefferson, and they kind of went down that road, and everyone said this isn't working, and they had to go back to the table and to complete this negotiation. So there was a little bit during this time of, well, what's going on? Everyone knows he's going to be the highest paid, but they had to work through the details in order to be on the same page to get this deal done.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, people have made some – I've seen some stuff just about people like, man, the guarantee really jumped for this wide receiver market. And it did, like, without question. And a lot of people said, like, I don't know if my team should – like, every team is in a different situation. And for this team – and with what they want to do, it just totally makes sense. I mean, you have a rookie quarterback. You have a guy in Sam Darnold who you're going to need as many weapons as possible to bring him along as best you can. And so to pay a guy with your ample cap space that you have, a guy at a premium position who's young, who's barely gotten injured, and even when he did, he amassed 1,000 yards. Like, it's just a total no-brainer, which is why the employee in Cincinnati at the Kroger who said they was going to be traded to the Bengals, it's why the Patriots hype, it's why all that stuff never made any sense. And look, like, in negotiations, there's going to be it's going to get contentious when there's this much dollar capital involved. Like, there are going to be times where you feel disrespected, or probably you feel like, it's just not going to happen down this road. But ultimately, as you heard today, and I believe them fully, they were both committed to making it happen at some point. And so, to your point earlier about Justin Jefferson in a leadership role, like, I think we often think of leadership as like the vocal, get in your face. I'm not sure if Justin's ever going to be fully that guy, and I don't think you have to be. Like, I read a book recently, Captain Class. It talks about some of the greatest captains in the history of sports, and some of those people were not always your rah-rah leadership guys. And so Justin, I think him expecting excellence, like, if they lose, he's going to be really pissed about it because he really cares about winning. And you also know that he has this chip on his shoulder that he's had since he was a 2-star recruit coming out of Destrehan High School. So to me, all of it kind of just, it makes sense. It makes sense with where this team is at. And to the point about like them creating this plan, I mean, I think the first year Kwesi and Kevin got here, there weren't many great quarterbacks in that draft. I think Kenny Pickett was the highest quarterback taken, and they were never going to do that. I also think at that time, I mean, they felt like they had enough pieces on this team that they could win more games. And guess what? They did in the regular season, at least. A lot of them were by one score. But ultimately, they wanted, it seems pretty obvious to me, to get to a place where you have a rookie quarterback, where you have maximum flexibility, and now you can take any amount of routes and have a long-term sustainable window. I mean, you weren't going to be able to just keep pushing money back forever. Mm-hmm. And so the way they've built this is a pretty flexible, wide-open future. A lot has to go right in terms of quarterback and draft picks and all that stuff, but you can totally see the path that they've gone down. It's taken some time to get here, and it might not be smooth sailing this year and with the schedule specifically, but I think in terms of building the right way, it's pretty hard to argue with what they've done.
Well, and what's really stood out is that they have followed up on all the things that they wanted to do and that they've said that they've wanted to do, which this was a very important part of it. And when you talk about leadership and culture and so forth, I can't remember where I heard this, but someone said usually those things are just a product of your best players. How good are they, and how do they act?
Yeah.
And with Justin Jefferson, the way that he handled himself through this entire thing, including getting this done now and making sure he was here now, but the way he practiced last year during minicamp, didn't go to OTAs, but minicamp, training camp, annihilating people on the practice field. And then there were not leaks, there were not reports. The insiders that maybe even the Athletic hires to find information couldn't get a whole heck of a lot because nobody was running to the media trying to intimidate the other one or push a certain narrative and so forth. and that's the way Justin Jefferson wanted it. So he's handled this entire thing like a leader, which I think gives you more confidence that he can elevate into that role. And he even talked about it today, that it was kind of Kirk Cousins' team as a veteran quarterback, and now it becomes his with the rookie quarterback. And he talked about, I can't remember word for word on this, but just about telling JJ McCarthy, like, I got you. I'm here for you. Believe in me. Trust in me. Right. That whole thing. Give him confidence. And I can't think of anything better to give your rookie quarterback contract than this person. And then just 2 minutes out there on the minicamp field and watching him run around versus the other receivers. You just like, yeah, that. Just reminder, everybody, don't forget what this looks like. This is the best guy on the field every time he's out there.
He was doing this thing, and I on a podcast, like, probably shouldn't do this, but he's like doing the. He's always reminded me, and it's people are gonna be like, this guy's an idiot, which they usually say, and that's okay. Like, he's always reminding me the way he runs routes is like a jet ski on the water, where you can just jerk it any way. You don't really know where it's gonna go. That's just how I've always. That's how I've always jets. Jet ski, that was pretty good. But that's how he's always. You
want me to just move on to the next topic?
No, I want to say this. Like, you mentioned last year and him showing up for OTAs and stuff. I mean, I'll never forget that one day. Minicamp, excuse me, not OTAs. He came out here, did not have to be. He trotted out with these gold cleats, and they're reflecting on the sun, and he was just balling that day, like spin 360 catches of top cornerbacks. It was wildly impressive, and a lot of credit to me. I mean, it starts obviously with his family. Like, he has a really tight family with his mom Elaine, his dad John, his brother Jordan, his other brother Ricky. Like, they are a very tight family, and I don't think the way he handles stuff is a coincidence, considering just the way they've approached everything as well. And I also think a lot of credit is deserving of like guys like Keenan McCardell, who Justin made a point when Kevin O'Connell got the job to keep Keenan. And Keenan has been through, and Keenan went through a holdout. So Keenan, in terms of the advice that he could provide, I think it's really important. And so I've been impressed from the time I moved up here. You know, like, I knew he was an incredible player, but you never know. Like, you always think about wide receivers and wanting catches and touches, and just for really with everything, I said it earlier, but he just is like a kid who loves the game and doesn't want to. He's just almost like cooler than wanting to make a mess of things. And so, to see this happen the way it did, the Vikings deserve credit, to your point, like, for not leaking things the way they probably could have at some point. So, it's good to see that this got done, and not surprised by the way it played out.
There's a little bit with him of like Tim Duncan and the type of star he was, where there's no real controversy to the guy, and there's no debate topic that we can really fight over it, where I can't make any case to ever trade him. A lot of people tried, and those cases were not good or compelling at all to trade this type of player. He is the franchise centerpiece. He acts exactly like that, and there's nothing controversial about him. And this was the most controversial thing, and then he just gets the deal done before mandatory minicamp, and we all carry on with our lives. So how much – the one last thing I would say – is just how much he impacts the quarterbacks is something that Kwesi brought up to us, and saying you can't just factor someone's performance, their stats, whatever else. You have to look at the greater impact on the offense. And it keeps being subtly brought up what he did with Nick Mullins at the end of the year, with no one trying to insult Nick Mullins. But like, man, even when Kirk was out, like, yeah, wink, wink. We know what you're trying to say. What did you think of the structure of his contract? Because I didn't see it when I did my emergency podcast reaction. I had not seen the structure yet, but now that I see it, it's really what I thought it was going to be. The first 2 years, this year and next year, lots of flexibility, probably a restructure at some point in the third year. That's where it gets a little more tricky, but there's nothing here that says you guys are screwed because of this contract. And Kwesi has talked about 2-year windows. I look at it as next offseason, it's spending spree time, and then they'll have to pull more levers with the salary cap after that. But in the immediate, in the next 2 seasons, I don't see where this is going to change what they can do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Part of me wondered, like, if they'd front loaded a little bit to be able to both benefit on the back end and also to take advantage of some of their space. But I think to look at it that way would be losing sight of what exactly you just said. Like the way, like if I've learned anything from how Kwesi adofo-mensah operates, like he wants flexibility. He wants places he can run, places to go if he can find them. And I give him credit for it because it gives you levers. The more levers you can pull, it's probably, I had a conversation with somebody. It's like the more decisions you make, the more you can be scrutinized. Mm-hmm. But the more decisions you make, the more you can maybe surround things in the most optimal way. So I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now or what have you, there is a restructure, or there 3 years, there is some reworking. That's fine. But you're exactly right in that in the immediate, they have some money to spend now if they want to. They could roll it over. They could really spend next year, which is what I'd probably expect them to do. In terms of you probably have the rookie quarterback starting at that point, pretty obviously. There's some stuff you could do with Brian O'Neill, TJ Hawkins. There's flexibility, but I don't worry at all about just what they can do with the cap. That's been behind the scenes, very non-sexy thing that Kwesi adofo-mensah has done, and Rob Brzezinski and Emily Battis. That's been a focus of theirs since they got here, was to smooth that over, and they have.
And that goes to their 2-year plan initially of, like, this is going to come up, so we have to make sure we can afford that eventually. And had they been in Super Bowl or bust mode last year, then this might be more difficult because they would have been extending contracts. They would have been putting out more void years and everything else. But even the way that they set up Cousins was to be done with him after this year as part of their salary cap, which allows them to be able to deal with this. Now let's talk about the quarterbacks. So Sam Darnold throwing to Justin Jefferson for the first time. I can't imagine how that must feel for Sam Darnold. It must have been like, I was throwing to Terrace Marshall, and look at what I have now. But
Jermaine Kearse.
It's Jamison Crowder. I mean,
I don't know how far we could go.
Braxton Berrios.
I think the tight end's name in New York was Chris Herndon.
Chris Herndon was here for a year. Yeah, they traded a 4th-round pick for him.
How about that poll?
That was a great poll.
Thank you.
He was good for a year for them. Not here, though. So anyway, I think that after seeing another practice today, Sam Darnold has been quite good. I actually liked his practice today. I thought he was pretty accurate. It's really windy out there, but he was pretty accurate. Throwing the ball on time. There's not a ton of reps that are very high speed, which makes this difficult. But his comfort and the way the ball's coming out, I thought it was pretty strong today. On the other field, it was a struggle. It was a struggle for J.J. McCarthy. He had a couple interceptions. One may have hit the ground, but close enough. A couple of balls that got batted up in the air. Some inaccuracy today. I just thought it was a little bit more of a battle for J.J. McCarthy today. Probably the worst we've seen him. And I don't want that to be aggregated. It's the worst practice ever for J.J. McCarthy. The point just being, when I asked O'Connell about it, he keeps going back to learning phase with this, and we have to approach it as such. But if you want my takeaways, J.J. McCarthy, I thought, had a tough time out there, and Sam Darnold looks better each time he's gone out, which just makes me lean more and more toward, when we get to training camp, it's probably Sam Darnold's show until proven otherwise.
Yeah, there's no question with that. It's so... I find the takeaways of these types of days so interesting. Like, I get why people desperately want to know what's going on. They can't be out here. It's our job to give it to them, no question. But I have a hard time sometimes where I'm like, do I track passes? If he goes 8 for 10, then people think he was great. But was he great, or was he just checking the ball down? If he goes 2 for 10, was that terrible? Did he throw that pick because he was trying to fit it in? I think so. But, like, could it have been the receiver? It's just very hard but yeah, I mean, there's no question. Like, he sailed a couple balls, which is fine. I think I've said this so many times publicly, but I commend the Vikings for the way they've handled this from the outset, which is we want to take a long-term view. In this sport, in most professional sports, but in this one specifically, teams have a very hard time doing anything but thinking about their job this week, this day, my ego. And so the fact that they have taken the approach of learning, it's great. And I expect Sam Darnold. I was laughing. There was one pass where Justin Jefferson kind of ran a corner out on the left side, and it looked like he kind of cut his route off, but Sam kind of not airmailed it, but they didn't link up. And I was thinking, like, What if Sam just went over there and is like, would you run he just screamed at Justin? It would have been very out of character. But I would agree. Like, Sam Darnold's looked efficient. He's looked comfortable. And, I mean, 3 years with the Jets, 2 years with David Tepper and Matt Rule. Like, it's just so hard to know what a guy's ceiling or potential might be given what he's been through. And it's just going to be – I'm like – people are going to be like, it's so boring, Sam Darnold. We want to see the new guy. But I'm really fascinated to know when you take a guy who was in the situations he was in and you plug him in this type of situation with these skill players, with this coaching, like, what does it look like? I'm really just like, that football experiment question is interesting to me. Maybe I'm just a nerd.
No, I think that a lot of people are in the same boat as you, including me, that I wasn't sure how this was going to look as far as first impression goes. And I don't mean to suggest that Sam Darnold has looked like Drew Brees or anything. Like, it's not that. I mean, there, like you said, there are some throws that sail and so forth. He had Johnny Munt running over the middle and overthrew him by a little bit and then kind of slapped his hands together. He did
hit Justin a couple times on like over routes. I was like, oh,
there were some very good throws today. I mean, ones where you go, like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And that has happened each practice, but today had the most of those. Maybe it helps that Justin Jefferson is out there and a few of them where the ball leaves the guy's hand. You go, I don't know if he's going to get, and he got it. So that's how it goes. But the velocity of the ball coming out of his hand, the way he's leading the offense, just the accuracy, I think, has been okay. It's not Kirk Cousins, but it's also mini camp. And it sets up for a training camp where we might go through it and feel like, Sam Darnold in this offense may have a chance to be mid-pack or something like that with the weapons that are around him and just this opportunity that he has to take a step in his career, and he still is in his mid-20s. It's always a battle, push and pull for me. How much do I want to buy this? As I watch him have good practices, I go, well, maybe I feel more like I want to buy this with Sam Darnold, but I think he is one of the more intriguing players on this entire team because it's a one-year shot. It's not a commitment at all. We know who's coming behind him, and it's J.J. McCarthy. So how does he play? Does he let loose? Does he play great? Does he play totally all over the map? I have no idea, but I've really liked what I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, so much of it might just be about, like, does he feel a genuine belief when he goes out there, both in training camp and on Sundays in the season, given he's starting, which I expect him to, at least from the get-go? Like, does he feel a genuine belief from Kevin O'Connell, from the players, from the offensive line, from the skill players? Like, those guys, it's hard to hide like your real belief about somebody. It really is. And part of me thinks Geno Smith, and I'm not comparing, I just use that as an example. Like, Pete Carroll is such a supportive, just positive vibes guy. And I think Kevin O'Connell can definitely be that way, but Sam will probably be able to feel how the people around him feel. And that to me is going to be pretty important. But I mean, and not to drift off quarterback, but like, I thought it was interesting. Justin Jefferson made a pretty obvious point to mention Aaron Jones and his explosiveness. Like, Justin did not have to mention that name in that press conference today, and he did. And so you put a guy like him around a Sam Darnold to keep him out of third and long situations all the time where he's throwing to Jermaine Kearse, Chris Herndon, and Braxton Berrios, and you have a chance to succeed. And like, again, I think the schedule out of the gate is so tough that, I mean, if he looks good in training camp, which against Brian Flores defense, we'll see, because last year was a disaster for the offense against Brian Flores defense. But if he looks good, I mean, when the bullets are really flying come week 1 and week 2, San Francisco, Houston, some of these games, like that'll be when I'm really like, I'm not going to judge off a practice like this. He's looked good. It is what it is. People are going to aggregate it. I'll write that he looked good in the takeaways, but does it really mean anything? I mean, I hate to tell you, but like, not for me at least, it's just so unimportant.
I hope that one of the things that the Justin Jefferson situation taught everyone is that it's okay to let something play out. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the different factors. But with J.J. McCarthy, for example, I thought it was a pretty tough day for him. That's all right. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll do another podcast talking about him, and it's going to take time with him. It's also going to be a while until we really know about Sam Darnold and whether these early returns end up resulting in something. If the day-to-day in training camp starts to flow smoothly, then we've got a pretty good chance here. But even then, man, I remember with Kirk Cousins throwing like 5 interceptions in his last practice before the season, and we were like, man, this offense is going to be a problem. And then they ignite Green Bay in week 1. So a lot of times we won't know until it's really on the field. But I am excited to see how it goes when we finally do get to the actual training camp where they can do more 11-on-11s that are full speed and not these kind of drop back and, well, he doesn't see it right away. So, okay, we'll just kind of wait and figure it out. It's going to be a lot different when we get there. Now, we are deep into this podcast, but we have not mentioned the most important thing that is going on in this organization. I mean, people think it's the Jefferson contract.
I can't imagine what you're going to say.
Personally, I believe that it was Kevin O'Connell's strong statement about the left guard situation. Dalton Risner and Blake Brandel. I asked him about this, and he had, I think, about a 9-minute answer breaking down how he wants competition at the position. But he did not say, we brought Dalton Risner back here to start. He's going to be the guy. In fact, went more toward talking about Blake Brandel and how they told him going into this season, focus solely on left guard. That's going to be your position. I think that's a pretty strong signal that they would like Blake Brandel to emerge here and win this job. But also it's a long season and you have to have depth. And if he doesn't shine, then they know what the baseline is for Dalton Risner. You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you're also trying to keep personalities okay in the locker room. Like, I think that's also a thing. If Blake Brandel assumes he's the left guard and then all of a sudden you bring a guy in that, I mean, Kevin said, like, we wanted to bring Dalton, and I believe that, and ultimately the money made it to where they felt like they could do that. But if Blake thought he would be the guy, and if the other offensive lineman thought Blake was going to be the guy, and now you're bringing in the guy who started way more than Blake, you probably need to make sure we're managing this the right way. So there's part of that. But I fully believe Kevin when he says we want to play the best 5. And there are a lot of combinations out there to do that. And I mean, for me, it's something we've talked about a little bit. I'm sure you've hit it a lot. But, like, I still have a major question with the interior of the offensive line. Whether it's Risner, Brandel, Ed Ingram, like Bradbury, I don't really care. I don't have the utmost confidence in that group. That's just me having watched it for 2 years. That's just how it is. Now, and with that said, when you start against the 49ers, who they did play pretty well against last year, the offensive line, when you play against the Texans, when you play in Green Bay and against the Jets defensive line, the first 5 weeks of the season, like, again, playing the best 5 to me has to be the situation, or you're going to lose potentially the confidence of Sam Darnold, any idea of the run. Like, it could be a disaster. So that's why that's why I fully believe when he says it's going to be the best 5, and whether that means Blake's at right guard and Dalton's at left or what have you. That's just how I view this. I also saw some of the numbers, I think, of Risner's contract earlier. I don't think it's this massive major commitment. So they didn't tell me with their commitment to Risner that it's this obvious starting situation, even if he does have way more experience than Blake Brandel does.
There's nothing that points to we desperately wanted this guy back to start. There's really more of, well, we'll take him back at a price, which is always kind of how they operate. And today, and I will say this was secondhand, I was at Kevin O'Connell. So Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune mentioned to me that Dalton Risner basically said, I didn't have a lot of other options. And it's sort of interesting that the rest of the league looks at Dalton Risner and says, yeah, I'm good. We're okay. I thought he fit in all right last year, and it was serviceable guard play, which is better than they've had most of the time. But I did want to get to Aaron Jones a little bit because he talked somewhat today, and every time he's out there, I think he moves different than the other running backs. Yeah. I think he's so good at catching the ball when it's coming his way, adjusting to the ball, and there's a vibe about him that's totally different. If they can't figure out the run game with Aaron Jones, I mean, I know with the run, the guards and everything else, but even I thought it was one of the funny moments today at the press conference where Justin Jefferson was asked about the team airing it out, throwing a lot of passes, and off to the side, Kevin O'Connell was kind of looking at him like,
he's like
he
me,
did this,
like he did this, like,
yeah,
come on, man,
yeah, come on, man, we're gonna throw the ball. Like, we just paid this guy $35 million. You think we're gonna run first? But I also think that they won't have a good offense if they can't run first at times. So where do we stand with this line, Aaron Jones, and is there any belief that this can be much better than it was last year?
Well, I mean, to me, it feels like their hope is that Aaron Jones' skill set is going to elevate the run game. Now, will they do some different stuff schematically? Like, probably. And I don't know if that's running out of the shotgun more. I don't know if that's using more inserting more from the wide receiver position the way the Rams did last year. Like, the Rams, I mean, you got to give Sean McVay, it's a very not fun thing to talk about, but like they really overhauled their run game all last year.
They ran well, yeah.
It was their priority. Now, when you have block first wide receivers like Puka Nacua, Cooper, not block first, but block really incredibly skilled blockers, and Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Skoranek, like they were able to use those players to create their system. And with this offense, you have CJ Ham, you have Josh Oliver, so I don't know how much different you can really get. Like from a receiver blocking standpoint, I don't want Jordan Addison anywhere near blocking within the line of scrimmage. So it feels to me like they are hoping that Aaron Jones' skills and his ability to create yards after contact, which is definitely better than Alexander Mattison, and from what I know, better than what Dalvin Cook did in 2022, that will help them. But I fully agree with you. Like, we can joke about the passing and Kevin O'Connell being the quarterback and paying Justin, but like running the football efficiently in the NFL makes everything easier. It makes it easier on your defense. It makes it easier on your quarterback. And again, to me, you have to pass to win, probably, yes. But I really believe you have to run, and they have not done it well through Kevin O'Connell's first 2 years here for whatever host of reasons, and I think it's a grouping of them.
I think we're going to find out whose fault was it anyway, because if Aaron Jones comes in and is great, averages 4.7 yards a carry, then we're going to just kind of go, oh, well, the Alexander Mattison decision didn't work out. And really, with Ty Chandler averaging 4.5 last year, pretty strong insinuation that somebody could have made up for some of that. But I also felt like there wasn't a real rhythm and understanding of when the play calls for runs should happen. Maybe they didn't have an identity with their scheme of the running game. And it's possible that Aaron Jones, who's one of the highest intelligence players you'll ever run across, can actually help them with that in figuring that out. They struggled with pass protection from running backs. That's going to improve. They struggled with screens. They struggled with catching the ball. Alexander Mattison had a lot of drops. Like, it was a calamity last year in the backfield.
But the crazy thing is, it was worse the year before.
And there was the fumble in Denver that cost them the game. Like, the backfield can't be worse. It really comes down to the health, I think, of Aaron Jones.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you about something that was brought up in the press conference, which was everybody kind of talked about their favorite Justin Jefferson play. So before we wrap on this, reaction Justin Jefferson day out here, unless you had any other things you want to talk about. Oh, you know what? I was going to throw out one more thing. So think about this while I'm talking.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
So I want to talk about our favorite Justin Jefferson plays over his career. But do you think that they're going to run more like two tight end stuff? They don't have a wide receiver 3. They haven't gone out to get one. I don't know where Jalen Naylor was today. Maybe hurt already. I hope not for him, but
he wasn't
out there today.
That's a good point.
Tristan Jackson looks fine. They're moving N'Keal Harry to tight end, which makes so much sense.
He's huge.
So much sense.
That was the first thing we said last year when he came. It was like, that's N'Keal Harry.
I suggest they move him to edge rusher. He's so big. Yeah. Like, he's enormous. So they've got this deep tight end room with Robert Tonyan, looks really good out here.
Yeah, he does.
Johnny Mundt can play. Oliver, you're going to bring back Hawkinson. You're probably going to keep 4. So
they're not cutting Johnny Mundt.
Not cutting Johnny Mundt. So I think they're going to run a lot of two tight ends.
Yeah. I thought they were going to run a ton of it last year, but I think it was only like 20%. And what happens is when they get into third and long situations, Kevin O'Connell typically always resorts to 11 personnel, three wide receivers on the field. Now, if they can run the ball more efficiently, then maybe you could just you could roll with 2 tight ends or even CJ Ham. I mean, there's ways around it. I think that's what they would want to do. Now, in terms of the wide receiver 3, I still think Jalen Naylor. I also I don't know if they're in that market. I really don't. It would just be purely speculating. But adding another player there to me would make sense if they could do it. So we'll see. But I think, yeah, if they had it right last year, they would have used the 2 tight end sets a lot more. I mean, that was why they paid Josh Oliver. I mean, I remember, and I've written this 700 times, but I mean, at the combine in 2023, I believe, Kevin was like, we got to run the ball more effectively. And it's like, okay, our question was probably like, how are they going to do that? And then the first player they signed in free agency was Josh Oliver. And then from a scheme standpoint, they used CJ Ham as kind of an insert guy. But other than that, there wasn't a ton of different. I mean, they didn't use the pistol. They didn't really do very much different. So, yeah, it would make sense if they do that. There's no doubt.
I was thinking Robert Tonyan might change the math here if he makes the team and he looks good, which he has so far, and then you can move TJ Hockenson around when he comes back. So you might not do it right away, but Brandon Powell to me is more of a 4th type of wide receiver, and you need a 3rd one, or maybe they just want somebody to emerge, and who knows? Maybe it'll be Lucky Jackson. We'll find out.
I like Lucky Jackson.
He makes a lot of catches out here. I shouted him out because he makes some plays.
We talked last year, he and I did in the locker room one day about like scheme, XFL, NFL. He was a great guy. Really, I every time I see him, I root for him.
Okay, Lucky Jackson season. All right, so I'll give you mine. You can think about it. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said that when Jefferson recovered the fumble against Detroit, where he could have just sat there and stood and watched the ball and nobody would have ever blamed him, but instead he came from out of nowhere, dove on it, gave him a chance to win the game. If they had won that game, that play is iconic, right? But it goes forgotten because, the softball that Nick Mullins threw in for an interception at the end of that one. But for me, it is the touchdown he scored in his first game that he started. It was during the pandemic, so there was no fans in the stands, and it was a long throw to him down the sideline. He makes the catch. He shreds the tackle and then gritties into the end zone with no one in the stands. Like, they're just completely dead, empty situation. And like this guy in his first start is like, no, I'm grittying. I'm like dancing into the end zone. I'm like, this guy, this is different. And he went for 175 yards in the game, totally took over the game. But as a rookie, to just have that unreal confidence and to be so locked into the game, I don't think he even realized he wasn't dancing for anyone except for us up in the press box. There's like
it was a
20 people from 1,000 miles away being like, oh, well, he's dancing. I just like that is in such insane confidence that even at that moment you went, I think this is immediately different than what you usually see. So that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think.
O'Connell's was the catch in Buffalo, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one. But, I mean, I think for me, it might have been that move he put on Stephon Gilmore against the Colts, where it was just like, I've never seen anybody tap like that. Like, it was in, out. Back, and I think earlier that game, Gilmore had, like, kind of targeted him in some way, and his helmet flew off and he looked mad. So, I mean, that's really some of the ones that come to mind, like the Patriots game in double coverage, like just getting crushed on these jump balls and coming down with it and flexing and doing his little whatever thing that I can't do that he looks beyond. It's not something I should ever try, and I just did. But yeah, I think the one against the Colts, I mean, there's been so many times where I'm like, that guy just moves differently. Jet ski. And he, so I think that's the one where it was like, he fakes in, he turns around, toe tap, comes back out. It's just where I just like, come on, man. That's where most of the time he catches these balls, I'm like, come on.
Because the level of toughness for the wide receiver position is very important, and it's not given as much credit because they're not linebackers and eating glass or whatever, but they go after him. Like every game, they go after him in a super physical manner, and week after week after week. And in that game in particular, he had caught a pass. Gilmore hit him in the head. They had to take him out of the game for a little while to do concussion protocol or whatever, then came back in and did that. And it was a big part of the comeback.
And that's the thing. And they won the game. I mean,
right.
and that's like when I think of this guy, I mean, he really... Like, again, there's so much selfishness. There's so much ego. Like, I literally believe him fully after some of these games, and he's so mad they lost that it's like he just wants to win more than anything. To me, that's just who this guy is. And it's a special – like, you don't come across the guy who's the family guy, the guy who doesn't make hay in terms of the contract negotiations, the guy who's still young, still improving, who can be a leader, who loves the game. Like, who's a marketable – kids love him, flag football. Like it's just it's a rare deal.
It really is. And it's a great day for him and for the organization. And you could tell just from everybody's face what they thought of this finally getting taken care of and locking up Justin Jefferson for a long time. And now the true test begins, which is they're going to win some football games. Like, yeah, it's great that you signed him. And it's great that they have done this whole offseason plan and executed it and checked off every little thing on the box of the lists except for nail the 2022 draft. They must have just forgot to check that one off. But everything else, pretty good. But now they have to go out and prove it. So
and it's not going to be easy. I mean, again, this schedule – every time I look at it, I'm like, "Is that they really?"
Did you pick the W's and L's? Did you? Pick
I don't. I have no. Don't put me on that.
You don't do that?
No, I will at some point, but I'm not ready. I need to see the joint practices, the clashing of the pads.
Okay.
No, I haven't. I'm sure I have, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't like making predictions. I'm terrible at them.
Oh,
I'm
it's
the
fun,
worst
though.
fantasy
Yeah, that's
football
fun,
player. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it is fun. It is part of the fun. Just like I was thinking earlier, we're talking about like. It takes time, some of this stuff, but like analyzing this stuff every day is that's the most fun thing ever. We're not out here; we get to see it for the first time. People enjoying the stories, the podcast get to see it. It's a fun time right now.
How about this? Make me a promise. When you're ready, that we'll do a podcast where you pick every game.
Okay, that's
okay,
fine.
you're good.
And people are gonna be like,
of course, yeah. You always
tomatoes at my face.
Everybody gets it wrong all the time, so don't worry about it.
No, I'll do it.
I had to stretch a little for 9 wins because it is a very difficult schedule. So that's kind of the uphill battle that they're facing in this division this season and with their schedule. So anyway, there will be another one of these tomorrow. Dane Mizutani will be sitting in this chair next to me and breaking down more from Vikings minicamp. So appreciate everyone watching / listening. And thank you, Alec Lewis. You've been doing great work at The Athletic, and people should go check it out if they have not already. So
appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, it felt like training camp. I'm ready to go. No, I'm not.
The sweatiness, really, for
correct.
sure. Usually it's like 70 degrees out here.
The humidity would probably be.
It's not the heat. It's the humidity.
Right. That's what they say in Alabama. But no, I'm not. I'm actually not ready.
They have that in Alabama. That saying.
Yeah.
Is that everywhere in America?
Alabama's unto itself. I mean, it's kind of a one of a kind.
I just mean
place.
Anywhere where there's actual humidity. So I lived in Buffalo. They would say the same. Well, it's not the humidity.
I think it's just everywhere. But every place that thinks that it's hot, that's what they do. But again, not ready for training camp. No. We're gonna. I want you to get aggregated on the McCarthy stuff a couple more times.
Okay. He
No.
went 6 for 9.
No.
Use that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Football.